Good morning. Thanks for coming, and thanks very much for the invitation for us to present. So Orca Gold is we're gonna take you to a whole different part of the world. It's in northern Sudan, which is it's important to make that distinction. About 4 or 5 years ago, Sudan was split under international pressure into Sudan and South Sudan. And today I'm not going to be talking about South Sudan other than to say, unfortunately, that's turned into a bit of a nightmare. But it has no effect on what's going on in Sudan. And in fact, in terms of the Western powers, what is happening in South Sudan shows the world how good Sudan in the north actually is. So we'll go through that. But Orca Gold was formed about 5 years ago. I'll give you a bit of a background. Look, the project that we have, unlike a lot of things you're going to hear where people are looking at established mining areas in the world and looking at reworking them based on rising gold price, this is brand new. There's virtually been no exploration in this part of Sudan other than back in the 90s by the BRGM. And that's the reason we've gone there. So we've been in Sudan now for over 5 years. It was originally a private venture started by my partner, Lucas Lundin, and I, following the success of Redback. We really liked the potential of the Nubian Shield and the Nubian Desert, and we'd been active in another one of our companies in the group in Eritrea, and effectively we just followed that success north. Lucas and I funded the company privately until we brought in, after we were in Sudan for about a year and a half, looking and getting the lay of the land. We brought in the ex-Redback management team into the company, still private. And when we made our first discovery, as we'll go through, we then backed our companies into a public shell which we turned into Orca. And fortuitously, our timing was pretty good. And with that shell, we got $60 million. And that's what we've been spending for the last 4 or 5 years. So we've done no real financing. Since that time, we've been just quietly working forward on this project. So in the summer of last year, we produced a PEA on our discovery. We're going to be producing a pre-feasibility study come around June, subject to some caveats that I'll talk about as we go through the presentation. But we've been fast-tracking this. We've taken it from nothing, so geochemistry, trenching, drilling, to a resource and soon to be an initial reserve in about 4 years. It's hard to do it faster than that. Okay, in the company itself today, look, we're in a very envious position. This picture here is our satellite deposit called Waddy Doom, which we'll go through as we go through the presentation. But the purpose of this slide is to show you where we are in terms of our issued capital, the capitalization of the company, but more importantly, who are our shareholders. Zebra Holdings is Lucas Lundin. We had a legacy shareholder in Orca, which was a Chinese SOE called Sinotech. And I brokered a sale of their position, about 12% of Orca, at the end of last year to Ross Beatty. And so now it's Lucas and Ross is the largest shareholder. Management and board, in actual fact, my family control about 10%. And Kinross, we're going to be issuing them shares as a result of a deal we announced about a month ago. That brings us back into Côte d'Ivoire. And Kinross will have about 9% of Orca going forward. So between 4 main shareholders, we control over half the company, which gives us a lot of flexibility in what we do. And unlike most juniors, where financing is always an issue, with our shareholder base, it really isn't. Management team, go very quickly through this. As was said, I was the president and CEO of Redback for many years. Hugh Stewart, who's the president, was responsible for most of the ounces that Redback discovered, particularly at Tasiast. Kevin Ross was my chief operating officer at Redback. He's back with us now on Orca. And Jeff Yip has been with the Lundin Group for quite some time. Board, Simon Jackson, the chairman, was also a part of the management team of Redback. He now is the chairman of Bedell Resources. Simon's moved back to Perth, Australia. And because he wanted to go back home and also thought it would be better to be closer to his projects, and then he went and became the CEO of a company with a project in Brazil. I'm not sure how that worked out for him. Alex Davidson was, I think everybody knows Alex. He was executive VP of Barrick for many years in charge of exploration. Bob Chase was head of the audit committee of Redback. David Field was the resource PM at Carmagnac in Paris for many years. And Derek White, most recently, was president and CEO of the Polish mining company KGHM. So a strong board for what we're doing, both in terms of financial and technical expertise. So here's where we are. As I said, we won't talk too much about South Sudan as to what I've said. It's a bit of a disaster. The areas here, a lot of things you've heard in the press for many years about Sudan are problems down in this area in Kordofan and Darfur. All those problems are rapidly declining. The various splinter rebel groups, which are mostly tribal, are being brought to the table and negotiating with Khartoum. Khartoum has done an amazing job of allying itself with various Western powers in the fight against terror. And that has culminated. Now, the reason people don't and haven't been going into Sudan is a result of perception generated by economic sanctions put in place by the United States back in the 90s. Sudan has completely reversed its policy in this region. It used to be back in the 90s allied with Iran. It's rejected those ties with Iran and has built relations now with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and believe it or not, Israel and the United States. As a result of that, on his departure as President of the United States, President Obama back in January signed an executive order easing the economic sanctions against Sudan. So as we sit today, American interests, American banks can now invest in Sudan. That order will be ratified in July of this year. And after that, I think you're going to see a feeding frenzy in Sudan, particularly on the mining side, as all the countries that have been standing out waiting for some sort of positive political movement in Sudan will, I think, come rushing in. And we've got the advantage of being there first. Sudan, and look, we've operated in many, many countries in Africa, many countries in South America, and I can tell you Sudan is probably the easiest country we've worked in, despite the perception in the marketplace. Sudan, one's principal languages is English, it's British law, as well as Shia law. It is got great infrastructure because of the oil revenue they enjoyed for so many years. The people are incredibly moderate when it comes to Islam. We were talking about it this morning. You can walk down in Khartoum and you can see young teenage girls out in cafes with no head covering, wearing makeup and jewelry. You see husbands and wives walking along the Nile at night, hand in hand. It is a very moderate Muslim culture. In fact, as you drive into Khartoum in the area that we have an office, one of the first things you see is a big Catholic church. Now, where we are, we're way up here in the north next to the Egyptian border. So to get to any significant unrest in this part of the world, you have to go all the way down here to the border with South Sudan. So we're far and away removed from any type of conflict in this part of the world. That's the order signed by President Obama. So what is interesting about Sudan? As I said, it is a brand new area for gold production, okay? As what we discovered when we got into Sudan was the biggest gold mining rush in history, bar none. There's somewhere between 1 million and 1.5 million Sudanese mining gold artisanally, from pick and shovels on surface to semi-automated or mechanical mining down to about 30, 40 meters at most. And that is producing, last year, 93 tons of gold. In other words, they were the third largest producer in Africa. This year, they're on track by their projections to be the second largest producer. So they're going ahead of Ghana and following South Africa. And there is no commercial modern mines. So that gives you an idea of the gold endowment of Sudan. So this is the Nubian Shield and the Nubian Desert area. And most of the mines to this point in time are here in Saudi Arabia. The only major projects on the west side of the Red Sea are Sukari, which is Centamin in Egypt, about 700 kilometers north of us in the same belt of rocks. Menegem is about 100 kilometers to the south of us. They've got a deposit of 4 million ounces right now. They are the Moroccan State Mining Company. And their issue, and the big issue in operating in the desert like this, is you can have a great deposit which is worthless unless you have water. Everything's about water in this part of the world. And so we were very cognizant of that when we went up and picked up our concession. And I'll show you that we believed we were very close to potential aquifers in what the rock units called the Nubian sandstones. And we were lucky enough to actually go in and explore for water, discover it, production test it, and we have now enough water to build our mine. Managem is not so lucky. They're 100 kilometers farther away from those sandstones, and they either have to build a big pipeline to somehow connect with us, or they have to build a pipeline to the Nile River, which is 150 kilometers away. The other big mine here is Hassai, and Hassai is like Bisha down here in Eritrea, which everybody would know from Nevsun. Hassai is potentially much larger than Bisha. It's been mined today for the oxide gold. They're now down to the copper and the zinc, and it's owned by the government of Sudan, and we'll see what the government does with it. But with the easing of sanctions, I would expect by the end of this year, the government will announce some form of deal on Hassai and going forward with further production. Okay, so this is our target. I think the thing to note here is the size of the concession. A lot of these things are huge, and they're based on oil, the oil laws at the time, and because Sudan had no mining per se. So this, our original concession was 7,500 square kilometers. By law, we had to shed as we do our work, and we've shed it down to 50%. And this is the concession we end up with at the moment. Our two resources, here at Galat Surfer South and here at Waddy Doom, this is a target that we're looking to bring into our resource before the end of the year, and then the other white boxes are other targets. We shut down exploration on this project a year and a half ago to concentrate on the economics and do the studies. Those are complete. We know we have a mine we can build, and now we're going to see if we can make it even better with further exploration going forward as we complete the bankable feasibility study. The red here that you see are artisanal workings that we've mapped. It's extensive. There's, at various times in our work here, there's been up to 10,000 artisanal miners on our concession. This gives you an idea of the grade and the distribution and what the pits look like in the main zone. This is going to change under the pre-feasibility study, and also it's very sensitive to gold price. As gold price goes up, the gaps between the pits will disappear. The mineralization, I'm only going to give you a couple of sections because it's very, very consistent throughout the ore body. What to note here is mineralization is from surface. It's wide. The grade is very steady. And because you're mining from surface, the strip ratio is very low. Under the PEA, it was 2 to 1, and we are targeting less than 2 to 1 under the PFS. The pit designs are going to come down under the PFS. All sorts of things in the numbers will change come June. But we'll talk a little bit more about what we've discovered over the last few months at these deposits. This is Waddy Doom, again, grade distribution. This satellite deposit of about 250,000 ounces makes a dramatic impact on the economics of the project because the grade here is almost 3 grams. Now, what's unique about Waddy Doom, as we'll go into, is that we've discovered 4 very high-grade plunging chutes in the current pit design, the current resource, and we're going to start exploration in 2 weeks targeting the depth of those plunging chutes. And by the end of the year, we'll be looking to put out a parallel study on going underground, particularly here, but also at the main deposit as well. But as you can see, the grade's pretty spectacular, and also mineralization from surface. I won't dwell on this. This is the PEA numbers. They're going to change dramatically. What I will bring your attention to is under the PEA, we were looking at a mine life of 16 years. That length of mine life is not good for an MPV. The reason it was done like that is that we were very conservatively targeting 1.8 million tons per annum of throughput, and that was based on water. And we were very conservative. Since that time, we've discovered our water and done the production testing to prove that we can have enough water to go much bigger throughput, and the PFS is going to come out somewhere between 2.4 million tons throughput and 2.6, and the mine life is going to come down to somewhere around 11 to 12 years, which makes a dramatic input on the economics. So stay tuned on that. Here's what's very exciting about what we've discovered in the last few months. So we're already looking at a project that we can build based on the PFS, the PEA, as an open pit scenario. What we discovered in doing the infill drilling and the geotech and the metallurgical work is we identified here 4 very high-grade plunging chutes in Waddy Doom. And to give you an idea, I mean, people come in and talk about high grade, you know, and they've made discoveries, but put these against just about any high grade discovery in the world, and these are spectacular. So this high grade chute is almost 31 meters at 10 grams. So what we're going to be doing is going underneath the pit design, drilling holes to depth, and to see how deep these go. Now, if any of you know anything about Sukari to the north, they had an open pit, and now they're looking at, and in conjunction with the open pit and going forward, they're mining underground their high-grade plunging chutes. And it's actually quite typical of the geology in this area. So we expect that these chutes have a long way to go to depth, and at the end of the day, will probably account for most of the ounces that come out of this mine going forward in the future. So pretty significant discovery, which we'll be following up on in a couple of weeks. That's Waddy Doom. These are the numbers coming out of the high-grade chutes in the main structure, or the main resource. Again, pretty impressive numbers, and that's going to be the focus of our exploration program over the next 6 months. At the same time, this is a target that is not in the resource. Again, it's like Waddy Doom. It's about 60 kilometers away from the main resource and where the plant will be, but again, very high grade, and we're looking to bring those surface ounces into the resource also by the end of the year. So bottom line, this project's going to get a lot bigger. I can't tell you how big it's going to be, but when we bought Tasiast and built it, it was 1.2 million ounces, about 2 million ounces of resource when we built it, and today it's over 20 million ounces. So the potential for these things to get very big is good, and it's a matter of putting drill holes into it. Timeline, this is a bit conservative, but we're looking to have the PFS out in June as it stands right now, the bankable study by the end of the year, start construction in 2018 and complete it in 2019 on this project. Now, what might change here is we may delay the pre-feasibility study based on the drilling that we're doing now on the high-grade chutes. If we get the success we're hoping for, we'll go back and redesign and lower those pits to try to grab some of that high grade, and at the same time start a study on an underground option. So even though there's a bit of a delay potential on the PFS, it's all good news. So very quickly, going to Côte d'Ivoire. We've been negotiating with Kinross for over a year on this for all sorts of reasons. The Côte d'Ivoire projects were discovered by Redback and by Hugh Stewart when he was VP Exploration of Redback back in 2007, 8, 9. And we pegged the ground. We tried to get it from Kinross when we sold them the company. We tried to butterfly those assets out. They refused. And so we've been working with them for the last couple of years, and most recently over the last year, to convince them to transfer those assets to us for a piece of Orca. And we made the announcement about a month ago. We reached an agreement with Kinross, and now Orca owns all the old Redback assets in Côte d'Ivoire, plus some others that Kinross has acquired on their own, like down in here. And we combine that with some Orca applications that we've made in our own right. What that leaves us with is one of the more substantial land positions today in Côte d'Ivoire. What has us excited about this the most is this project down here, Mirando, and also our projects here at Karakoha. These projects here are immediately adjacent to the east of the Tongon concessions and the Tongon mine that's owned by Randgold. But our first emphasis and focus is going to be on Mirando, where before the Civil War in Côte d'Ivoire, we were able to do some work way back when, and we discovered an anomaly from nothing of about 600 to 800 meters long, 200 meters wide. We trenched it, we drilled it very shallowly, 65 meters, and came up with what we think is a very solid discovery that we're going to follow up on. Key to note here is these drill holes only go down to a depth of 65 meters vertically. We're going to go in and drill at 150 meters, and we're looking to come fast track a resource announcement in Cote d'Ivoire at Mirando. The key thing here to recognize is we all talk about, everybody's going to come in here, and a key to mining today is talking about recoveries. The beauty of this deposit and discovery is that the oxides and the sulfides with preliminary metallurgical work leach the same at almost 97%. So this is a very simple project to process, and it's just a question of how big we can build it, and we will be drilling hard on this for the rest of this year. So what's Orca? It's a company that we started post-Redback to build on the same type of a business model, go in and find a project we can build. When we're confident of that, grow the company again, either by acquisition or through exploration and development. And we've done that now, we think, with Cote d'Ivoire. And we're looking to go into 2018 with pushing forward on 2 development projects, one at Block 14 in Sudan and the other in Cote d'Ivoire. The shareholder base, the people, tried and true. We've gone and built from a small project to a very, very large mining company. And we're looking to do something like that again. Strong shareholder support, very deep pockets in the shareholder base. And we're looking for an exciting year this year and into next. And when you combine that with the political situation improving in Sudan, I think this is going to be the place to be going forward for new discoveries and exploration in Africa. Thanks very much.